We got another international special guest on the What's a BPM podcast this week. Uh, we share a lot of things in common. We're both mad about dance music and both into running. So, welcome to the podcast, Ed
Oh,
Jenkins or Ed Real.
it's a pleasure to be here. Dialing in from Bristol, UK, and I just hope the line is nice and clear, and just can't wait to chat with you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, mate, this would be good. Your
Yeah.
volume's great. What's the weather like over there at the moment?
I think there's two subjects that are not closer to an Englishman's heart. Is obviously the weather, and the weather's pretty crappy out there.
Yeah.
It's grey, dreary. It has been really Arctic cold, but now it's just classic wet and grey. We're obviously midwinter here, and the second conversation at the moment is just how sick everyone's getting because
Uh,
here in Europe, there's just a whole load of kind of colds and flus flying around, and I'm literally just getting off the back of 4 weeks of being under the weather, and it's knocking people for six. But we're a resilient little country, so we keep going.
that's it. That's it. I mean, we are talking off air before. I was saying I've been surfing with my youngest this morning. It's the complete opposite over here.
Wow,
It's
yeah, it
too
really
hot.
is. It
Like
really is.
you
Yeah, I
honestly
mean,
get sick of the heat.
yeah, I'm trying to. It's January here, so doing dry January, which is obviously a good thing for the mind and body, and trying to sort of go out with various mates and support them with their kind of health with a 5K, and yeah, we're meeting up at 7:30 in the morning here, and it's pitch darkness,
It's
and it doesn't get
7:30.
light until we finish the 5K just after 8 a.m. So yeah, it's mind-boggling.
No way. Well, mate, I always say this, but this is a podcast about the history of the scene. I usually focus on the Australian scene, but I often do the international interviews. And funnily enough, I saw you on Instagram doing the running thing. We'll get to the running thing later. But
Yeah.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your history and how you got into the dance music scene?
Oh man. Well, look, I mean, as you can see from behind me, I'm sitting here in my record room at the moment. My whole house is just full of vinyl, and yeah, my journey really sort of started. Yeah, I mean, just really kind of when I kind of went to secondary school, which is kind of aged 11 here. I used to get the school bus into school because we live pretty far out in the catchment area, and there used to be older kids on there, and I was quite a forward young man, and probably quite a forward older man now. I'm not scared to speak to anyone, and sort of strike up a vibe. So yeah, we just used to I used to like chat to these kind of kids who were like 16, 17 about what they were listening to, and obviously late 80s, early 90s, particularly in the UK, was just probably one of the most exciting times for music across the board. Early rap and hip hop, heavy metal was still around. We had kind of the Manchester scene with Happy Mondays and Stone Roses, and then obviously acid house and rave, and just incredible pop music as well. So just this incredible kind of world opened up to me on these bus journeys to school, and eventually, crazy as it sounds now, these 16, 17-year-old kids who are just doing their finals before going off to university, they would lend me cassette tapes and vinyl, from the Beastie Boys, License to Ill, Stone Roses, Happy Mondays, all of this stuff that we talked about. And I'd go home and tape it, and just because it's a connection to older, more worldly people in my small world. I just threw myself into it, and that music just really ignited something in me that nothing else really had done so much before. Although, having said that, I was always quite enthusiastic about everything I kind of threw myself into. And pre music, I was kind of really into windsurfing and water sports and generally kind of being outdoors and getting stuck in and being energetic. So yeah, I threw this energy into music.
Wow, windsurfing. God, you don't you
Yeah,
not are you
well,
doing that in the winter?
well, this is it here in the UK, and the the not ironic thing, but the stupid thing is, I was too young to drive, so reliant on parents, and we also lived geographically, grew up right in the centre of the United Kingdom, so minimum 2.5 hours drive each way to the nearest decent kind of open water. Although we did have kind of lakes and reservoirs
Yeah.
around us, but the real kind of kicks were when you sort of went down to the sea and tried to kind of navigate chop and waves and stuff like that. So yeah, my poor parents, who are incredibly supportive, would drive me and my brother around and indulge us in these kinds of activities. And actually, as a footnote, yeah, 5 years ago during the pandemic, I just wanted to get back in the water, and so I've just become a real hardcore kite surfer, which is kind of probably the most middle-aged of extreme sports that you can get into. And I'm out all weather, kind of all over the UK, and we're off on an international trip, my partner and I, in a couple of weeks' time to one of the kind of meccas here in Europe, and yeah, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But it's quite extreme, like my music taste. So I think there's a theme there. Anything that gets kind of the dopamine and serotonin levels peaking, whether it's musically or activity wise, then I'm kind of always been drawn to it. But another kind of really interesting thing in the musical journey, which was a kind of milestone for me, was because we lived and went to school in the middle of the UK, an area called the Cotswolds, which is, beautiful kind of nature, very old Harry Potter style countryside. And they do loads of filming for all sorts of, kind of films that have old-fashioned countryside, around the area. It's kind of equidistant between the main kind of population centres in the UK: London, Birmingham in the Midlands, Bristol to the west, and Bournemouth and Southampton and Portsmouth to the south. So come 1991, when I was sort of 15, and really kind of, becoming, the first iteration of myself as a young adult, rave music, and more precisely, illegal rave music, came to our area. And it came to our area because there was lots of space to hold these illicit underground parties that were, unlicensed and ad hoc. And also they were equidistant. So within an hour and a half, 90 minutes of driving from London, Birmingham, Bristol, etc., all of a sudden, you'd have this kind of meeting of the tribes, who had kind of like been ignited by acid house and all the kind of media furore and chart success of acts like the Prodigy, who were kind of on, Top of the Pops, which is our national kind of music weekly TV program here in the UK, and hugely influential. Yeah, all of a sudden the youth woke up, and anyone who could get mobile, whether it was, having your 17-year-old provisional driving license, or taking your parents' car without permission, or worse, was getting on the road and coming to the Cotswolds where I grew up. And so summer 1991, when I was a highly impressionable 15 years old. And, we've all been there. You're kind of just like soaking up everything. Everything's kind of like just wow. And, you're viewing things, through a kind of really positive and exciting lens, not really kind of, viewing it through a kind of sensible adult lens at that
Yeah.
point. It's just, yeah, the circus came to town, and literally within a year, 1991 to 1992, every single person I knew had been to an illegal rave. Teachers were going, just the entire kind of, sort of anyone under the age of 30 kind of in the countryside had just had this great awakening. And, we were coming into contact with rave music, with techno music. All night dancing, being under the stars, meeting strangers from big cities who seemed like exotic creatures from other planets. And, at its peak, quite famously, just down the road from us, 20 miles down the road, summer 1992, we had it peaked with an event called Castle Morton, which you can Google, and that was somewhere between 20 and 50,000 people gathering
Wow.
illegally, without a license, without mobile phones, without the internet, and basically raving under the stars for 5 or 6 days non-stop. I know you have these kind of bush doofs and the kind of doof culture, in Australia, which is, maybe fairly similar. You find a bit of land, and, perhaps it's not fully licensed, and a little bit kind of like ad hoc and community based. Well, imagine that just on steroids, but again, without, yeah, traditional modern forms of communication. This was all word of mouth. It was all, whispers in record shops, and phone up a telephone line to, find out the location of the party. So imagine, an impressionable, energetic, young Edward, yeah, at the age of 15 or 16, just absolutely having my mind blown by probably one of the most seismic youth kind of revolutions that had happened since punk in the 70s.
Can you remember any DJs that stood out in your mind from that, or was it just all just chaos? Just
Listen, like, that's let's get this straight. I mean, you look at the records in the background and all the kind of paraphernalia and stuff. I am an absolute kind of like archivist for this culture, because it just had such an important impact on me. And I always
on the
say,
world.
really, I think the stuff that happens to you when you're sort of 14, 15, 16, I think, particularly as a young man, but also, women as well, this is got to be the most kind of important stuff that happens to you from a kind of cultural, point of view. So you remember it vividly,
Yeah.
and those songs, those artists, those events, those concerts, raves, whatever, those events, they become like your kind of, I don't know, awakening moments. And so when you hear that stuff, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, it still resonates with you,
Yeah.
and so I can tell you every song, every DJ, every
Wow.
party, every day,
Yeah.
primarily because I'm a real rave nerd,
Yep.
and archivist. And you might have seen on social media that, one of my passion projects, one of my many passion projects, is, I run like a kind of annual celebration of vinyl and rave culture called the Black Gold Vinyl Fair, and we've got one coming up in a month's time on Valentine's Day. We love vinyl, and essentially, I'm bringing together record labels, record sellers, key kind of, legendary producers and DJs, alongside kind of people who are kind of doing it, now with the kind of revival of that rave scene. And we're just having this incredible kind of afternoon celebration of record digging and sharing and talks and DJing and meeting, kind of, networking. So yeah, artists of those days, who I still would say are the best DJs I've ever heard. There was a DJ from Bristol called DJ Easy Groove, and he was called the Techno Dread, and he was kind of quite a wild character and had a very wild kind of DJ style, mixing up kind of breakbeat UK sounds with like Dutch hardcore, which I know is very popular in Australia back in the
Yeah.
day. Real hard 4/4 kick drums and lots of swearing. And yeah, he would just, I mean, you listen to those DJ sets now and you imagine the equipment and the setup they were working on, real rudimentary kind of early techniques, awful mixers, probably with no crossfade, just kind of like, a few up and down kind of sliders. Certainly no effects, and then set up on a real rickety scaffolding in a quarry or a field or a
Yeah.
forest with absolute carnage around you and police helicopters overhead. And these guys are just absolutely slaying it.
Yeah.
So and there are still recordings that are on YouTube. They these good on these guys. Someone, probably the sound system guy, had the kind of wherewithal to record some of these performances onto to just cassette, and those cassettes then got shared and re-recorded, and on the bus to school or in our school kind of common room or on our early Sony Walkmans, we would just be trading tapes, sharing tapes, because in the countryside at the age of 16 there's no public transport, there's no nightclubs, there's no, we were, gosh, 45 minutes to an hour's drive from the nearest city. So, we were kind of incubating this culture through mixtapes and cassettes, and obviously you'd go shopping with your mum on a Saturday to the nearest town, and you'd go to a record shop and you'd pick up these A4 sized flyers that were just these fantastical, colorful kind of snapshots of another world, and you'd kind of stick them up on your bedroom wall and just dream what it must be like to be at one of those events.
Oh, so cool. One thing I must say,
Are
like,
we buzzing? Yeah,
oh, like I'm just
absolutely.
listening, just I can just imagine what it was like. But you know what you're saying about
Chaos.
those the DJs playing on the rickety stages with bumping needles and stuff like. I listened to some of them old sets and I look back and I think these guys knew that people didn't really understand mixing or anything. Like they could have got away with doing anything and people would have gone mad. But some of them old mixtapes, they're mixed seamlessly and there's
And vinyl
tricks.
too,
Yeah.
and vinyl too. And for anyone watching this who's never really encountered vinyl, and that's fine, of course. We live in a digital world now, and music and mixing is far more accessible, which is great because it opens it up to a whole new world. But with vinyl, there's very little kind of manipulation once the needle hits the record, and the sliders up, and the rest of the club or the party can hear what's on that record. It's really about keeping those records in time, but also then knowing kind of when the record changes and how that then matches with the other record changing, so that you're not having kind of breakdowns where there's no beats suddenly kind of clashing over the beats of something else, and it's everything's kind of synchronized, so that in an ideal world, your audience is probably blissfully unaware what's happening at all. They could just be listening to a CD or a kind of
Yeah.
a non-stop kind of radio mix as far as they're concerned. But then also you do have these showmen, like this guy DJ Easy Groove, and another guy, DJ Ratty, who was from the Midlands, UK, who again kind of cut his teeth on this sort of 91 illegal rave scene with Easy Groove. And then they got picked up and started to headline the big legal raves that
Yeah.
were happening, and just became absolute folk heroes amongst our generation, and still are. They sort of, they go away and they come back, and they're still incredible artists and performers 35 years, 40 years later, which is mind blowing. But you know, these guys came from the hip hop world, which only kind of preceded rave music by maybe 5 years, but the style of hip hop was all around kind of the scratching and the cutting and and essentially taking two separate records that were their own songs, complete songs, but you know, creating a third song by, you know, cutting in and out and chopping and changing between those two. And they took that kind of thesis and did it live in front of 20,000 people, 30,000 people on a rickety stage with chaos going off around them and with scratching and cutting. And it kind of matched the music production and arrangement at the time too, because the way that kind of the UK rave sound, which was a breakbeat record at 130 beats per minute, which is a bit faster than kind of house music these days, but was basically a bunch of old sped up hip hop samples with as many kind of different catchy samples from TV films or children's programs or famous old rock records that had a particularly interesting melody or riff, all kind of like mashed together, very, very crudely. That kind of lent itself to that style of mixing, because every kind of 20 or 30 seconds, the record would change to a different breakbeat or a
Yeah.
different sound or a stop or a start or a, you know, they're called fills or edits. So that enabled the DJs to play around and to chop and change between two of those records that are just, they start it with one sound and there's about seven different records by the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
they
yeah,
end. Because again, the producers were inspired by hip hop, and essentially, you know, hip hop was the created the ingredients that were then used to create a sort of sped up, excuse my French, but it's English language, bastardized version of hip hop that
yeah,
suited the energy of these raves, which was faster, more sort of raw and energetic. And I learned to DJ then as well, getting my first really terrible belt drive turntables at the end of 1991, just saving up pocket money, and then yeah, you know, just trying to make it up as I went along because there was no YouTube, there were no tutorials. I was in a village where the nearest person to my age was my younger brother, and you know, going and buying one record a month that I could afford from the local record store and just listening to rave tapes and just thinking, just what is happening? How is this? You know, just you know what? Had no. It took me a couple of years to learn that the aim was to get the records at the same speed, and it was just make it up as you go along. But at the same time, there was a whole generation of young people making it up as they went along because,
yeah,
yeah, the learning process was either gut instinct, or kind of like osmosis from snapshots of being at a party or seeing someone else DJ. And I think it, obviously kind of created quite an interesting creative landscape because, from these kind of like make it up as you go alongs, you kind of have all these happy accidents and these
yeah,
kind of like
yep,
byproducts, which sometimes were just better than the thing itself and moved the scene or the culture along a little bit because someone was playing around with a record or playing around with a computer and a sound happened or something kind of went wrong but actually the mistake sounded better than what they were trying to do in the first place and if the other people were like, damn, that's amazing. How did you do that? And the producer or the DJ was like, it was a complete
yep,
mistake. And so it was kind of like, a very playful time and, a time where it seemed like every 6 months for the next kind of decade, things would change. The music would change, the sound would change, new artists would come, new labels, new shops, new raves. And obviously, for someone who's kind of, yeah, likes a little bit of thrill seeking and likes the kind of like non-stop kind of fervent energy of things, yeah, I was hooked.
So did you like obviously you improved with your DJing and then
I
did
don't
you
know about that. Every day's a school day. Yeah, I improved with the DJing, but look, it was a long-ish road. And in a nutshell, I did I did my first rave in inverted commas under 18 party when I was 16 for like let's call it my 16th birthday in a kind of school hall or a hut in a village and uh, yeah, I had like 300 kids come from all over the place. I had some quite sort of nefarious characters turn up from various corners of the countryside, let's say, who proceeded to cause all sorts of chaos and mayhem. Older boys, let's say, and you know, I was supposed to DJ, but I was so preoccupied on the door, just firefighting. You know, you imagine what, you know, yeah, there was nothing else to do as a 16-year-old in the countryside. So you imagine this kind of thing was like a honey pot for
yeah.
all sorts of carnage and drama. But I made a few quid, you know, for a 16-year-old, and that kind of like really hooked me. And I went up to the big town on the bus the next day and spent all the proceeds on new records. And that then kind of led me on a path which meant that I really, you know, messed up at school and in the final couple of years, but I still made it to university down on the south coast, which was kind of quite fortuitous. Maybe I was supposed to go to Liverpool University, which obviously at the time had a massive rave scene with Cream nightclub, which obviously became Creamfields and ultimately the first super club in the world
Yeah.
and first festival, rave festival in the world that influenced the entire world's EDM culture and business. If I'd have gone to Liverpool, I'd probably have got into trouble because, you know, there's a lot of gangsters up there and a lot of kind of heavy stuff that goes along with the rave scene. And I probably would have just thrown myself into it as a country boy and really, really kind of got my fingers burned. So I went down to Portsmouth, which, you know, was equally rough and dangerous, but in a much less organized way than I think Liverpool. And there was nothing happening. No clubs, no raves. And yeah, I don't know what it is with me. I've always been that guy who just does stuff. So within the first 12 months of getting to university, I had to change my course because I kind of was so distracted with the rave scene. But I opened a record shop, a vinyl record shop, and I started like the best kind of like techno drum and bass, house music, you know, club event in the city. For my peers. And yeah, that kind of set me on a course that was very successful for a few years, managed to get through university. And in the record store, three young kids came in with their school uniforms, 16 years old, in proper, they were at the grammar school, so proper blazers. They would come in and buy Happy Hardcore records. And one of them one day comes in with a cassette and he's like, I sent this cassette to Computer Music, the Bible of music
Yeah.
production in the world, magazine at the time, no internet. And they've made me demo of the month. And they put me on the cover mount DVD. You remember when magazines used to have a CD or a DVD on the cover? Computer Music used to do that every month with samples and loops and also demos that people had sent in.
So who gave you
Not
that tape?
I'm getting there, bro.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Sorry, I was
so
thinking. I thought you might
and
have got it
so
wrong.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so and as a result of this demo from this 16-year-old in Portsmouth, a regional city, he got interest from a record company, and he's like, "Look, the record company guy's coming down." He said he would sign me to the record label if I can do a live performance of this music. And the music was kind of like Prodigy influenced, so kind of breakbeaty techno. This was 1996, 1997, when the Prodigy had done, I think, Fat of the Land,
Yeah.
their probably their opus. And this 16-year-old kid hugely influenced. I mean, he was almost like a young Liam Howlett, who's the prodigy in the Prodigy. So that was Nick Sentience, and the record label was Media Records, that then went on to kind of open Nukleus Records. So yeah,
Wow.
I was like, mate, I'm 21 years old. I'm like, sure, come and do your live show at my club. And we were throwing a big kind of end of term rave, loads of great sort of live, DJs, I think, and maybe Chris Liberator, the guys from Escape from Samsara, which used to be at the Fridge on a Friday in Brixton. Um, and some great drum and bass people. So yes, and Nick and these two kids from his school, Tom Neville and Martin Dawson, who both went on to have really, really great house music careers, did this kind of like miming kind of dat performance, which was just how you did it in those days, because in order to replicate a techno performance live, you'd need your entire studio, which is
Yeah.
just
Impossible. Yeah.
um, if you've ever seen Underworld or people like that, they literally take their entire studio on the stage, but then they're getting paid $250,000 to perform, so they can afford that. So yeah, these kids did it. The following Monday, I got a phone call in the record shop. I'm full time at university as well as being full time in the record shop and doing all these parties and just being away with the fairies. And yeah, it's hey, I'm Peter from the record label. I like Nick. I'm going to sign Nick. I like you. I saw what you were doing. I think you're great. What are you doing when you finish university? And I just said, more or less, I'll come and work for you. And so, fast forward a couple of months, I did my last sort of university exam on the Friday. On the Monday, I was in London sitting at a desk at this kind of independent record label in Clapham, London, called Media Records. Down the hallway was a couple of studios. The engineer, one of them was called Ben Keane, BK. And there was another studio with another guy who collaborated. He was the DBM in BK and DBM for Cortina, Music is Moving, and other early kind of like Nucleus heartbeat stuff. And yeah, we just got to work. And that's kind of was when, yeah, things really kind of, I guess, started in theory to sort of professionalize because, I was technically full-time employed at a record label. Yeah, just having,
Sorry. Just how old were you guys at this point?
so I was like 22, 22. Well, this is the interesting thing. So Nick, Tom Neville, and Martin Dawson were 17. Nick's girlfriend, Emily, who's still my best friend, she was 16. We got in a van and the four or five of us drove up to London and we slept in a spare house that Peter owned in Clapham. He kind of gave it to us because obviously he'd signed this Prodigy style band,
Yeah.
and obviously he was, putting the cost of the rent against their kind of, recoupable
Yeah.
money with the record company. So, he was kind of offsetting his outlay. And yeah, it was me, 22, three 17-year-olds and a 16-year-old girl in London, like in our own big house. And just like told to go and make yourself famous. So,
Wow.
and but again, really, formative for me. lot of mistakes, a lot of things I would have done differently. But again, just kind of like that, going back to making it up and trusting your instincts. Yeah, I kind of just sort of pinpointed some areas where I thought this band could start to sort of get traction, build a kind of audience. That happened to be the London illegal rave scene, which at the time, at the end of the 90s, was just like there was so many derelict warehouses, cinemas, office blocks around London. It was before kind of, a real kind of real rejuvenation and renovation of central London, which kind of sort of kicked off, I'd say, in the early noughties. And yeah, there was still a real kind of counterculture left over from the rave scene at the early 90s and these massive sound systems and people like the Liberators, who I had booked for my clubs in Portsmouth. So I had this connect. And yeah, we would hire on a it's just mad. On a Friday, I'd leave the office for the record label. I'd travel across London at the age of 22, 23, rent like a hire van, drive back, and on the Saturday we'd put like maybe 10 people in the back of this hire van with no windows or anything, three people up front, and we would make a telephone call to the hotline to find out where the rave was, the illegal rave within the M25, what warehouse or cinema or whatever. And then we'd all just pile off. We'd get there at like 1 o'clock in the morning. We'd go and see who was going to give the band an opportunity to perform, because there would be multiple sound systems, but they would all have their DJs. So invariably, one would say, "Okay, yeah, come back at 7 a.m. and you can set up and perform." So we'd just party or just hang out in the back of the van listening to the radio, because Radio 1 nighttime on a Saturday was awesome with the
Yeah.
Pete Tong Essential Mix and Annie Nightingale. And, we'd hear, I would send demos to like Radio 1, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, Annie Nightingale would play one of the band's songs, and talk about it. And we'd be sitting in a van, like in arse end of London outside this just booming warehouse, and all of us, yeah, just memories, madness.
Crazy.
And
Yeah.
and then, yeah, 7 o'clock in the morning, we'd take all the equipment out and into a warehouse. And you can imagine at 7 o'clock in the morning in the UK, like in January, like what a rave warehouse would look like that's totally feral. And yeah, that these 17-year-old public school boys would set up and just bash it out. Whilst me and my
Nuts.
friends, who are a couple of years older, would just keep all the feral people away
Yeah,
from
yeah.
stealing
Like
anything.
security.
Yeah, and ultimately that didn't work out. The band didn't become the next Prodigy, but at the same time, BK took Nick Sentience under his wing in the studio in the office, and Nick kind of sort of, because he's was a prodigy in making music,
Yeah.
very gifted. The two of them would kind of lean into this sound that BK was making, because Ben was going with his friends to a club called Trade, which, if you don't know, was kind of like it's called the original all night bender, and it was a strictly gay after hours at a very famous club called Turnmills. And it would start at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning and go through till midday Sunday. And it would just be the mecca for early hard house. Tony DeVitt was the resident, Steve Thomas, Ian M, Pete Wardman, the absolute dons. And BK was part of that crew, and he would be making tunes, and Tony DeVitt would be playing them, and Ian and stuff. But he would be doing that as his own passion project, not like Monday to Friday studio work at media. And then, yeah, because the band didn't work out, Peter, the boss, was like, well, you better make some money. So we kind of started essentially putting out early Nick Sentience Records and BK Records under this Nucleus imprint label division, and I kind of ran it, and yeah, it went pretty well.
Yeah, well,
It was
that's an
absolutely
understatement. It's an
mental.
understatement. Because I remember over here in the record shops, as soon as Nucleus come out, it was just everywhere. Like it just exploded. And I mean, that
Yeah,
music wasn't really my thing, but everyone I knew that was into like raving and DJing, they were all over it. Every release, they would just buy.
and buy on site. And I think
Yeah.
what was different with Nucleus to the other competitors was, a little bit of my energy. I was 22, 23. I didn't have a clue, but I went with instinct. One of the first things that I did, which was a game changer, was I just thought that record labels would take records directly to record shops. And in London at the time, we had, let's say, 10 record shops that fed the entire A-list DJ network, not only of the UK, but internationally.
Yeah.
Black Market Records, Plastic Fantastic, Tracks, Cocan's Eye, Pure Groove. And, they would ship records to people in Australia as like kind of tastemakers. So, but it turned out that, I'd read about this. I'd read about this being a thing in the rave scene in the early 90s. It was so DIY. Someone would make a record, work out how to press 1,000 copies, put them in the back of their car, drive around record shops, and just sell them directly. And I
Yeah.
was like, something was just like, well, let's just do that. And within a couple of years, I was selling like 1,000, 2,000 records direct to record shops, which meant that we just had this incredible connection with this tastemaker, this wider tastemaker pool, and no one else was doing it. No one else was bothered. By that time, there were middlemen, distributors who
Yeah.
did all that hard work for you. But of course, that created a disconnection between the people making the tunes and the
Yeah.
actual people playing the tunes. It was far more sort of formalized, which enabled it to scale. And ultimately, we tapped into that as well. But it just gave us this incredible kind of like machine and connection to just, yeah, when someone who works for a record label or makes a record gives you the record, you're like, hell yeah, you're far more, sort of engaged and ready to support, that product than if you just buy something that's anonymous on the shelf. So I employed that. And then on the flip side, Peter, the boss, he was a very sharp music guy, and he had had a lot of experience and a lot of success, in pop dance, in the early 90s. And so he was able to deploy his very, very sharp and astute business practice, and enable us to go out there and then do deals to create these compilation albums, if you remember them. And
Yeah.
yeah, we were, I was mixing, putting them, signing the records, mixing them together into a hard house anthems. They were being advertised on the television in between the biggest kind of like soap operas and stuff like that on mainstream TV. And they were selling in their hundreds of thousands. And obviously they had the same
Wow.
logo as the records.
Yeah.
And the combination of all of this sort of branding just absolutely saturated and dominated the marketplace. And that led us very quickly. By 2002, we won a very prestigious award, the dance label of the year at there's a industry Bible called Music Week, which has been going every week since the dawn of the music industry. And we were the first independent label to win that award. It was based on unit sales, and we beat all the major record labels, your Sonys, Warners, sold more vinyl than them. Um, there was a prestigious award ceremony, and you see these like the Oscars or the Brits like that at the Grosvenor Hotel on Park Lane in Mayfair, London, in the ballroom. The assembled thousand music industry hobnobs, and it's a that's a boys' club.
Yeah.
And when the famous comedian who was the compere announced that we were the winners, there was just silence. And
Oh,
we
really?
walked up
Yeah.
there, me, BK, Pete, and maybe a couple of other people walking right. Our table was right at the back because they were like, you can come because you're nominated, but just don't talk to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we just walked through this crowd to just silence. It's like this,
Wow.
like, because historically, for like, the 20, 30 years prior to that, it had been the same three companies that had won
Yeah.
everything. And you know what? After that, they changed the rules so that we couldn't win again.
Crooks.
Isn't that mental?
Yeah.
And that's great, because that the underdog, really just putting two fingers up to the establishment, that's kind of something, and innovating as well. And that's kind of what I love doing. And obviously that leads us on to kind of running at festivals and Trackitdown, which was one of the world's first music download stores that I co-founded, before iTunes, and some of the work that I'm doing around AI. And yeah, I love and music as well, finding the latest, newest, hottest stuff and kind of sharing that with people, and being able to kind of say, hey, I really love this and I think you'll love it too. And I think that's kind of like probably a theme and a strand that's kind of gone through my whole kind of personal and professional career.
Man, what a ride you've been on. Like from the start, like what a journey. It's so
Mate,
cool.
highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes, I mean, it's a bit kind of grandiose, but you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And
Big time.
sometimes, yeah, when you're passionately believing in something, that it's going to be the big thing or a popular thing or a crossover thing, you have to stand by it. And sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you've misread the room. And I've done that a few times. Backed the wrong horse, whether it be artist management, which I've kind of has been my mainstay for the last decade, managing some of the world's biggest headline DJs, but then also supporting some of the most exciting emerging talent, which is really where my passion is,
Yeah.
because you're really helping someone to move the needle. And also you're sharing this incredible talent with the world, which,
Yeah.
hopefully my energy comes across when I'm passionate about something. And yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And, there is, particularly in music, but in the wider world of business, I think kind of timing is this X factor. And,
Yeah.
some people are lucky enough to get the timing right every time and it's just bang bang bang, but not most people. You get the timing right a couple of times, sometimes the timing's wrong. You've got the best product, the best artist, the best music, the best whatever, but the marketplace is just like, I just don't get it.
I think that that's half the battle with like you can like you just said you can have the most talented artist, the best product, but it just isn't the right time, and then it just kind of misses, and then that's it, sort of just fizzled out to nothing. But yeah, that's like a lot of I've interviewed like a lot of the Aussie guys, the like I've had people like Tall Paul and that, and like talked a lot about trade, and yeah, he told some funny stories about trade, but a lot of well, some of the guys, when you listen to them, they were obviously super hardworking, super talented, but they were just in the right place at the right time.
Right
Like
place, and that's
yeah,
I call it. I mean, it's the X factor. And I think it's not a coincidence that the popular search for a star program it's called the X Factor because the X Factor is literally that intangible thing that's going to move the needle. And quite often that is timing. It's because there's got to be a whole confluence or coming together of a set of circumstances, culturally, politically, economically, technically, that have to align at that same time. And then you're cooking on gas. And there are things that are way, way beyond your control. Politically, technologically,
Totally.
so I've just been commissioned to write a book and to write a book on that kind of like heady turn of the century hard house scene in the UK and beyond, and hopefully it's going to be kind of the first or one of the first kind of oral histories documenting this incredible period that still brings people like you
Yeah.
and I together now 25 years later. And what's been interesting as I've been writing kind of a synopsis and a kind of pitch to the publisher is just what factors came together at the turn of the century. So we had number one, obviously moving from kind of raves into clubs that kind of created this sort of pressure cooker. We had kind of Tony DeVitt pop out of or crossover out of trade into kind of mainstream super clubs like Certain Essential or God's Kitchen or Gatecrasher and take this sound that had been incubated in this one very
Yeah.
intense after hours party and allowed to kind of create its own sound and energy. And then all of the sudden, the rest of Clubland is like, flipping it. This is absolutely
Awesome.
just
Yeah.
revolutionary. Um, which then obviously had a halo effect of other people wanting to make that music. But more interestingly, we had the internet. And when I started at Nukleus in 1998, we had a fax machine and a telephone. We had a computer, but it didn't have the internet. And by 2000, we had dial-up internet and we were able to email people in Australia or South
Yeah.
Africa who were also suddenly, discovering the world through the internet. But also we had the first chat forums. We had harderfaster.net, Don't Stay In, Four Clubbers, Gurn. We had these regional Energy UK, regional prototype websites that had the ability for people to message other people in between the weekend for the first time in the history remotely, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in the history of mankind, the first time in the world you could sit there at work just gossiping or whatever, not realizing just how revolutionary this technology was. So that connected people in this hard house scene like never before because hard house and drum and bass were the two scenes that had this real kind of like culture around them and community around them. And so that then migrated onto the internet and became kind of early adopters. Mainstream house music or whatever pop music, they did have that kind of, you had super fans gathering together to, kind of talk about their favorite pop artist, perhaps. But I don't think in the way and the scale and in the kind of impact that we had, because we
Yeah.
were then meeting up with these people every weekend.
Yeah.
And, so there was an unbroken communication, which, is mind blowing. Like you're in the same room as these people that you were having the time of your life with 7 days a week. And obviously, now with social media and TikTok, we're deciding that probably that's not such a good thing. But obviously, the way that we were doing it
Yeah.
in 2020 was very innocent. And also, it was very simple. It wasn't, you were writing and it would appear, but not like you and I on a Zoom on the other side of the
Yeah.
world now. So that came and that influenced Hard House. Then we had kind of like this kind of visa situation with the Antipodeans. So for a period of time, Australians, Kiwis, and Saffers were able to come to London and work for 2 years. And so when you finished university or you were on a gap year, you would come to London and you would like, I've got 2 years, I'm in London, I'm going to get like a clerical job and I'm going to party my ass
Sorry, you've
off.
just one of my good mates gave me that CD the other day. I don't know if you can see the
Yeah,
artist
yeah,
name.
yeah.
That's yeah, that's Mark Dynamics, quite a well-known DJ from Australia.
Yes, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
know him.
That's
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
his
absolutely.
aliases. Yeah.
And so the fact that tens, well, let's say thousands of Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans at the age of the peak party age were flooding into London with this energy and enthusiasm, away from home for the first time, finished college. They've got UK wages were better than wages back home, so had they were
Making
rich,
heaps of
and,
money. Yeah.
and it just like it lit a touch paper, particularly in London, right? And so you had Frantic and Fever, and this whole kind of like separate kind of culture of like Antipodean raves in London, like Solid Sundays and all these kind of like after Fahrenheit Fever. And obviously then that sort of melded with us Brits who were just like, this is like rave all over again. And the it just created this, just yeah, like I say, this kind of like set of technical, political, and economic and cultural kind of like circumstances that allowed someone like me to just have a really, 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 very exciting early career, which and
Perfect storm.
learn a hell of a lot. Accelerated culture.
Yeah. Like kind of like the perfect storm. Just everything just was just
That's
correct
right.
at
The
that time.
timing. Imagine
Yeah.
if I had, if I'd have come to London a couple of years earlier, if I'd have come to London a few years later, hell, someone like me more than likely, do something. But, just that happened and these opportunities for me to come to Australia, gig regularly in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Cape Town. I mean, just mental.
Can you tell us a bit about some of the early Australian tours? Like what shows you did, if you can remember where you played?
Yeah, so obviously there was kind of, well, obviously there were big parties in London, like Frantic, which again was run by someone who was very astute, and he saw the opportunity to export Frantic to Australia and around the world. So there was that real kind of connect between the London scene and the scene in Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide and Brisbane. And so, yeah, probably came out early, noughties. I know that kind of by that time I'd done quite a lot in Japan and quite a lot in South Africa, which also had kind of connects. Although Japan slightly more random, but there's always the Japanese young people love the energy of Europe, and they really kind of got into the energy of hard house, just like they'd got into the energy of rave, and after that, happy hardcore as well. And so they imported a lot of the UK sounds to Japan. So we would go and tour off the back of that. So yeah, so my first parties I did. I think I played my first. I flew into Perth for my first show, which was wild. Didn't sleep, and Perth was always awesome. And then went and probably did like the Gas Club in Sydney. Then kind of Melbourne. I did one New Year's Day, which is really wild, where I did like maybe the Gas Club New Year's Eve. This is probably like second or third year into Australia, and then took like a small private plane, which wasn't like Rockstar. It was quite rickety,
Yeah.
direct from the Gas
Yeah.
Club in Sydney to Melbourne, and played in that like the Dawn set in this big room for Hard Candy that was part of a sports center. It wasn't the Rod Laver, but it was similar to that, where there was trance in kind of this main arena, and then there was a side room with windows to the world. So daylight was coming up, and yeah, it was like 9 a.m. in the morning, and I was DJing, and obviously we'd kind of just completely shell shocked at the whole thing, and maybe 1,000 people in that room and just going absolutely off. So did that, and then flew straight back to Sydney. And yeah, I did also at least one of the Two Tribes tours. I don't know if you remember those.
Yeah. Yep.
And I did one where there was the Prodigy. It was the Prodigy, Armand van Helden, DJ Sneak, myself, Andy Farley, some breakbeat people, and yeah, we did kind of the Rod Laver there, which was wild, and we did the Sydney like Olympic Stadium. And obviously, Prodigy played kind of the main bit, and then we had like a side rave room. And yeah, just a whole heap of fun. Brisbane System Six. I think I did one there with Glasby and E&M, which was really wild. I did like a kind of a weird rave in like an agricultural showground in the city of Brisbane. But it was loads of kind of like sort of sheds with gaps in between them, six or seven
Oh, I
different.
know. That would have been at the RNA showgrounds
There you go.
for an
One of
adventure.
those,
It would have been
which
adventure.
was like that was
Yeah.
like raw. That was a raw
Yeah.
party. Like there was loads of hardcore, loads of people like dropping like flies. It was a pretty like hardcore time. So maybe that was like 2004, something like that. And
Yeah.
that was when I think, Brisbane and maybe, that was when it was, the hard house scene and the rave scene was really, really going
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
blazing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Those raves,
and
they would have thousands of people there. Like, yeah, it was crazy.
oh, and one thing I've just remembered, I DJ'd underneath the Sydney Harbour Bridge with Tiesto, New Year's Eve, for home. I used to play at home quite a lot, because strangely and coincidentally, I used to promote some parties in London with a girl called Beverly, and she then moved to Australia and she took up residence as the promoter of home in
Wow.
Sydney. So I used to play for her quite a lot, and they did a thing called Mobile Home, and 2002, 2003, maybe New Year's Eve. Me, Tiesto, DJ Dan, DJ Sneak, and yeah, but I elected to play at midnight, which I thought was just going to be the best gig of all time. And it was in a huge dock warehouse right on the water, right underneath the Harbour Bridge. And I was DJ and it was rocking, maybe 4,000 people. Quarter to midnight, the place empties. And for half an hour over midnight, I DJ to no one because everybody went outside to watch the fireworks.
Fireworks. Oh, no. Crazy.
I'm
Gutted.
like, this is gonna be the best moment of your entire life. It's me and my girlfriend drinking champagne. I'm just letting records play out in this
Yes.
huge like warehouse, thinking, oh, someone's gonna get their ass kicked for this.
No.
But it was me. I was like, I'll do midnight, make sure I'm doing
Yeah.
midnight. And then Tiesto comes on and the whole place bloody
Fills
fills
back
up.
up again. Yeah.
And I'm like, go on then, mate. And he's just like, cheers, man. But
Wow.
chaos. But at the time, I
Mate,
was
you
partying
you
a
you
lot.
gotta you gotta write a book about all this stuff.
I'm writing a book, absolutely, man. And I think, first things first, I think I'm really excited about doing this sort of oral history where my plan is to, interview 30 sort of players, scene people, but also, DJs and kind of piece together, like, in their words, kind of, weaving together all of these kind of stories, maybe with a bit of narrative from myself to kind of, join the dots between
Yeah.
some of the kind of quotes and stuff. And then I've reconnected with the inspirational Matt, who founded harderfaster.net, which was probably the biggest first kind of platform for a forum for hard house fans. And to be fair, the birth of social media in the year 2000, it's still there, harderfaster.net, and people are still posting stuff on it. So I am calling Harder Faster the oldest social media platform in the world. It takes a while to load, but it's a trove of memories. So I've
Wow.
reconnected with him and some incredible other people who were there taking photos. And again, one of these technological things that created the time was digital cameras came around. You remember
Yeah.
in the turn of the century, we had mobile phones. You could text, but that was it. No internet, no nothing. You couldn't, it was only like the mid noughties that you could take really crappy photos on your phone. So but obviously, some people had the wherewithal to take a digital camera that had pretty good quality for the time. So I've reconnected with Matt and a bunch of other people, and they've got, like, let's say 100,000 photos from that period. And as part of my proposal to the publisher, I submitted, a file of about 100 photos. And do you know what? The color, the vibrancy, just the euphoria of the crowd in these photos. It's like nothing you're it gives me kind of goosebumps just thinking about it because obviously I was there, you were there.
Yeah.
Mm, people have got like a religious fervor in their faces when they're just like, I am having the best time ever and I'm living in the moment. The classic, there's no phones. No one's holding a mobile phone up
Yeah.
recording. I'm just here with a bunch of people that I've probably just met tonight and we are having the best time ever. And you know it's really interesting that no one's written about this and no one's documented it. And yeah, so yeah, watch this space. Hopefully, the book will be out by the end of this year, early next year on Velocity Press, which has published tons of incredible books on music and music culture over the last few years. So yeah, exciting.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be half photos, half kind of like aura history interviews and stuff. So hopefully it will really kind of, yeah, spark some inspiration for the new generation because Hard House is back.
Yeah.
There's a whole new generation of DJs and artists that are playing it, particularly in Europe, in Germany and the Netherlands. Huge raves playing a new form of this hard, energetic,
Yeah.
euphoric music. And then hopefully it will kind of like stir up some really kind of fond memories from people who were there and maybe they're in their 40s 50s 60s now, a different life away, and hopefully, yeah, make them feel young again.
So, mate, like, tell us what you're up to these days, and then we can get into the ravers to runners and all that.
Yeah, well, let's focus on Ravers to runners to start with.
Yeah.
I started running just before I was 40. I'm 50 now. Kind of, yeah, needed to do something. I'm not a gym person. I can't. I don't know why. I just don't like instructions. I like being energetic, but kind of like on my own terms, and
Yeah.
hence windsurfing, kite surfing. You're out there on your own doing it. So I started running and did that for a long time. But when I came to Bristol 6 or 7 years ago for work to manage Maceo Plex, one of the world's biggest techno DJs at the time, I met some other people who also like running, and we kind of all worked in hospitality and entertainment. So our weekends were busy. Obviously, probably not a very good lifestyle. So we'd meet up on a Wednesday and just do a 5K trot around the harbour here in Bristol. That kind of grew because, yeah, there's a lot of people living and working at the weekends and living not a very good lifestyle, who found their tribe. Pandemic came, we doubled down and we did lots of remote stuff. We ran to Ibiza and back, which is 1,300 kilometers, between like up to 100 of us, everyone kind of pledging they'll do 100K or 150K. And we raised tens of thousands of pounds for homeless charities and stuff like that here in Bristol. And that was really good because it kind of brought everyone onto WhatsApp. And WhatsApp, is again technology. It's been
Yeah.
an innovative tool to bring communities together in real time, and more so than Instagram or other other tools. And then coming out of the pandemic, I was booking the DJs at Glastonbury Festival and a few of the other people in our core running community were working at other areas of Glastonbury. So we all came together and 10 of us did a run like before Glastonbury opened because Glastonbury is this huge site. It's actually 14 kilometers circumference around the fence. So, just to give you a kind of
14K
idea.
around.
Yeah,
That's
because
huge.
it holds 250,000 people within its perimeter. So it's a city with a wall,
Yeah.
and it's obviously just eye candy. It's beautiful countryside, but incredible stages and production and nooks and crannies. Then, obviously, me being me, I was like, well, we can make a thing out of this. So I contacted Greenpeace, the charity who have a huge stage right in the center of Glastonbury. They're one of the kind of three like partners, along with Water Aid and Oxfam, who raise money on site. And we were like, right, we're going to use your space. We're going to raise profile and money for you, and we're going to do this. So the next year we had 300 people, then we had 1,000 people, and yeah, we kind of capped it, between 500 and 1,000 because it gets, from a safety point of view, that's a lot of people
Sorry. So
running
you have a
through.
thousand people running.
Well, that we've had like 500-600 people. We kind of then have a wait list. We have people who turn up on the day. We could double it, with the kind
That's
of wait list and stuff like
crazy.
that. Um, and yeah, the second year, because kind of health and fitness had become the zeitgeist again, timing. A guy called Joe Wicks here in the UK kind of took fitness into homes during the pandemic with kind of Zoom calls and, kind of all sorts of programs, and really kind of, went mainstream with, you know, looking after yourself and personal training. We were a kind of halo to that, but obviously we're a kind of heady mix of festivals, which are cool, and this new kind of running and fitness, which is cool, and we're doing it at the world's most famous music festival. So we had all the kind of BBC and the world's media come down, and we were live on BBC Breakfast Television, me huffing and puffing around Glastonbury Festival and live on BBC Radio. And obviously then that gets picked up by other media and social media. So yeah, it kind of like we became the festival run club. And so right now, 2026, we run 3 weekly Wednesdays, one in Bristol, one in Bath, and one in London. Maybe 100 people, and it's kind of free. It kind of ebbs, it flows, but we've got a real strong community at the moment. Due to kind of a lot of investment of time and energy into, just connecting with people. Then we do the festivals. So we do 6 to 10 festivals around the UK and in Amsterdam, either for charity or just for the shits and giggles, to just connect people and introduce people to health and balance and well-being, at festivals. Then we do a few charity things. We have a thing here in Bristol called the Dry Run, which is a sort of sober, navigational, independent venue pub crawl where you run between 6 or 7 venues doing a kind of pub game challenge with non-alcoholic or low ABV alcohol. And then you're timed and given points, and it'd been a fun 200 runners. That's on the 31st of January here, and yeah, it's fantastic because I think once again, from a timing point of view, there is a real problem right now with loneliness and isolation. The ironic thing is the bigger the city, the more isolated and
Yeah.
lonely you can become. And in your 20s, you're out getting drunk, getting high, throwing yourself at the world, right? And you just, but when you get into your 30s, you're taking work more professionally. You maybe want to settle down, you maybe want to find a life partner, but you don't want to kind of rely on those crutches of, intoxication to kind of be able to go out and socialize. And for a lot of people, that makes it really hard. And historically, psychologists have said that there's a notion of what they've termed the third space, which is like maybe a sports club or a working club that was associated with your factory or your office where people would socialize, but not dating and not getting drunk, just, doing stuff, activities together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like on the decline. Society's changing. We're moving into our phones and into our devices, which, as most people know, and in Australia more than anyone, it's very isolating and affects your mental health. So we've kind of found by a happy accident that bringing people together with the running who share a passion for music and culture and partying is actually creating one of these safe third spaces where people our average age is kind of like mid 30s. Maybe that's because of me and Helen and Joe who are that age. That's how we roll. But I don't think it's an accident that the majority of our people are in their 30s because they like to party. And hell, we, as a crew, have started going out en masse to raves and stuff. And you bump into ravers to runners people everywhere, especially if you're wearing a hoodie or one of our cool t-shirts. But it enables people to have this human connection. And I think human connection with group running is just, yeah, the thing that really kind of like motivates people and the thing that we want to work out how to kind of build out on because in this world of AI and technological innovation, I wouldn't bet against there being more isolation and more challenges on us as human beings
Yeah.
to navigate this world. So we need more shit where people are coming together in a way where they're not, in a sexual environment or an intoxicating environment. And that's really kind of very powerful.
Mate, like I say to my friends who are not really into running, like that, the running club that I'm in is just, it's such a great thing for me. All those things you've just talked about, that's exactly what I get from the run club. Like Sundays, we'll go out and we do a long run, and I'll spend the whole run laughing, and then I look at my watch and go, we've run 20K, and you don't even
It's.
know
I
because
don't
it
think
just
it's again. I
goes
don't think
like,
it's. I don't think it's an accident that when you go and do a group, like if you're doing a race, like a 10K or whatever for charity, or or you're for self-improvement, it's not an accident that you run like 10%, 20% faster when you're in a group of people. There's the
yeah,
competitive stuff, but there's also just the energy that you get from being around other people sharing an experience that it increases makes you a better person. Let's just say makes you a
yeah,
better person, whether that's kind of like emotionally, mentally, physically. And I enjoy running solo, and running solo is also awesome, and I think a nice healthy balance of going out for a run on your own and just working through
yes,
stuff in your head, and obviously getting the miles in and keeping your physical health up. But yeah, we don't run faster when we run as ravers to runners, but we have a hell of a lot more fun. And like you say, people are now, yeah, we're seeing relationships like, dating relationships, we're seeing personal relationships, we're seeing business relationships, we're seeing all sorts of things kind of organically come out of the relationships and the trust and bonds that is formed by doing these weekly things. And it's the same, like it's my vision of what a good dance floor provides. But obviously, generally the dance floor in my electronic space, includes intoxication. And obviously that creates flakiness and insecurity and, kind of a negative side that we kind of are neutralizing a little bit by creating that same energy running.
Yeah, 100%. It's it's been like yeah, it's just been such a great thing for me for my mental health, my fitness, and just yeah, even like I race. I haven't actually raced that much lately, but I
I
often
can
will
see in the
race.
background, mate. Kudos.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that having a goal something to train for, it just yeah, it really it gives you something. Oh, it's
Dude,
not
look,
give you
look, you,
something to live for, but like it
yeah.
gives you
Well,
like
look, I mean, let's
purpose, you
let's
know?
focus let's focus on that, something to live for, right? In the UK, suicide is, I think, the number one or number two killer of men aged between like 40 and 55 in the UK, right?
That's
That's wild,
nuts.
right?
Yeah,
And so running or exercise, goal-based self-improvement with ideally other people is a lifesaver.
yeah,
And I do see it. I'm very empathic, and I do pick up when we have members of our community who, yeah, they've lost their job or they didn't get that promotion or they've split up with their girlfriend and they're 35 or 40. You can retreat into yourself and you can find yourself in a very tricky, mental
yeah,
situation. And we all probably know people who have sadly decided to check out early because they found themselves in this situation. And, alcohol or whatever's being kind of brought into the mix as a crutch to deal with this shit. And yeah, look, if running or going for a walk or playing five-a-side football or whatever, can support people and just say, hey, it's not that bad because I've got this to look forward to and these people are cool and, I can just be myself. I think, yeah, it's worth just the hard yards of running a club, which, for the most part is a bit of sacrifice. But myself and my partner, Helen, and Joe from Ravers to Runners, we get probably a lot more out of bringing people together and achieving stuff than maybe if we were just three people running on our own, right? So yeah, it is a lot of sacrifice and a lot of kind of organizing, but it is also, really nourishing.
totally worth it. Have you ever run London Marathon?
No, do you know what? I'm so far. I'm not a distance person. I think it's just the fact that my head gets bored. I like a 10K. I like a 10K with other people because again, just chatting. 5Ks every day, without really kind of, it's just part of the routine.
Yeah.
But like that whole kind of like running on my own, training. I just, I maybe I'm not a disciplined person yet. I haven't found my discipline. I like, um, I don't know if I like dipping in and out of things, but I like DJing. I like getting a buzz off DJing. I like going kite surfing. I like getting a buzz off kite surfing. But I think maybe those are things that you can pick up and put down,
Yeah.
when the conditions are right. Um, setting off on a 6 month journey of
Yeah,
hours and hours and
it
hours
is.
where
Yeah,
I could be DJing or I could be kite surfing or I
yeah.
could be like meeting up with friends.
It's a
I haven't got
huge commitment, eh?
yet.
Yeah,
And I'm not ruling it out because, like Helen, my partner, she loves doing 1 or 2 marathons a year, and it's something for her to work towards. And she's, I trust her. She's just like, look, whenever you want to do it, you can do it. But I think it is that like I've just got. I like doing lots. I like a
yeah,
whole varied platter of self entertainment.
yeah, yeah. I just
But
think it just
absolute
looks
kudos
so
to
cool.
anyone who's
Yeah,
disciplined enough.
it just looks like such a huge event. I just think it'd be such a buzz to run with all
Oh,
those
man.
people
I mean, there's
screaming
a
and
run.
cheering.
There's a run for every occasion, right? And I think whatever your passion, I think maybe, yeah, that would be a buzz. Doing kind of like a marathon, like trail in a really interesting, like,
Yeah,
environment in the country, that would also be a buzz. I see, Diplo's got his run club. I have a vision for doing, something kind of maybe like a weekend long event that's a balance between dancing and running, raving and running. I think, joining that dot and creating kind of like, a really kind of fun but balanced event that, yeah, makes, brings together two things that bring, create human connection and make people feel better about themselves. And I think, yeah, running, it is the zeitgeist at the moment. I think there's not too many run clubs, but there certainly seems to be peak run
yeah,
club at the moment, particularly here in Bristol. I'd say we've probably got 20 or 30 run clubs, and that's the ones that I've just seen, and that's from like 2 people to 200 people.
yeah,
Sometimes I think as a promoter, like, wouldn't it be better if, like, maybe there were, it's a bit saturated because, if you turn up to a run club and there's only like 2 people there or 3 people there, maybe you're not, but at the same time, it's great that people are able to just
yeah,
start their own stuff. But wouldn't it be awesome to bring those people together in a sort of structured 2 or 3 days where, yeah, you kind of meet new people, foster relationships, do some self-improvement, but also just, live in the moment and have a kind of bit of a hedonistic kind of time without crawling out of the festival on a Monday like you would if you went to a rave for the weekend.
Hey,
So yeah,
I'm hoping to come to England this year. So when I come, I'll definitely come and join you
bring it,
for a
mate.
run club session,
Yeah.
mate.
Oh
I
well,
got
look. I mean,
oh,
I think, yeah. I think this is a really strong 90 minutes. I don't know how you're feeling. I think
mate.
we've covered a lot of bases. I don't know. Yeah.
This this is this has been awesome. I've got some rapid fire to finish. Is that
Yes.
cool?
Okay. Let's do it.
All right. I always do the rapid fire, and it's good because you've just got to answer quickly. What first thing that comes into your head? Uh, Sunrise run or 4 a.m. dance floor?
Oh my God. I mean, for me, still 4 a.m. dance floor if it's
Yeah.
really cranking. But yeah, I am out running every morning. So yeah, the vibes of a sunrise. So unfortunately, that's a 50-50.
You can run after the dance floor. Worst run weather you've ever still turned up for?
Well, we say if you can rave in it, you can run in it. So that is the mantra. And here in the UK, we are beholden to the weather. So yeah, I've done everything: snow, ice, sleet. Yeah. So there we go. Just because I've been to, when I want to go to a rave or a festival, if it's raining, we're still there
Yeah,
partying.
yeah. I'll be dedicated. Coffee before a run, essential or
Oh,
dangerous?
listen, I run every morning. I do have a coffee to get me out of bed, but there is a process before I go for a run, let's
Exactly the
say.
same with me. Exactly the same. Yeah,
You've got to be very, very careful. You've got
yeah.
to be very...
Timing has to be right. Hey, one song you could never run to.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's just got to be styles, really. I am a dance music runner. I use the time when I'm running on my own to just go down rabbit holes of different eras and different set lists and stuff like that. I couldn't run to kind of like, crazy pop music. I probably could, but I wouldn't prefer to. So yeah, I stay in my lane. I keep the beats going.
I find that happy hardcore makes me run too quick because I feel like my cadence wants to keep up with the beats, and it's like, oh shit, I can't slow
Yeah,
down.
that's it. That's it. I mean, yeah, 1992 hardcore is the sweet spot because that is about 155 BPM, which I find is a really good pace.
Yeah, that's yeah, 20 BPM
Geek
slower.
out from that.
Uh, biggest myth about runners.
Biggest myth about runners. I don't know. I think running now is a very, very, very broad church. So I hope that there's no kind of stigma or anything that's preventing people from going running because I've seen run clubs for everyone. So yeah, get stuck in.
Yeah. Biggest myth about DJs.
That we all fly around in jets. And we can all do this and we can all scratch and go wiki, 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 because I
Yeah.
tell you what, that's not true
Bloody
either.
hard. Yeah.
It's so funny that universal sign for DJing.
Yeah. Yeah. Mate, I'll be quick, but I had scratch lessons and everything because I was desperate to learn how to scratch and I just gave up.
You can do it or you can't do it. That's my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Every single DJ has tried, and if you can't do it, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Learn to do nice, smooth transitions
That's
instead.
it.
Maybe that's your
Yeah.
lane.
I couldn't coordinate the crossfader, I don't think.
No, me neither.
One habit that's genuinely changed your life.
Well, I mean, the running, yeah,
Running.
running.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's become a habitual thing. Any runner will tell you there is a tipping point where you get antsy or agitated slightly if you don't go for a run, and that is you've made it when you get to that point, and you're like, ah. I've got to go for a run, or I wish I'd gone for a run. I think probably like any kind of thing, probably for the gym as well. And if you're starting on your running journey, get to that point because then you're kind of like you've got that kind of cadence.
Yeah. What was there a moment you almost walked away from music?
No, sadly, goodness knows where I'd be, what I'd be if I'd gone and got a proper job, and I might have been good at that proper job. But I'm here. I'm now a lifer, and I'm embracing everything that I can do that engages with music still.
Yeah, no, no way. You've got an awesome story. Biggest lesson the industry has taught you.
Honestly, it is like, it's you've just got to be self-assured and a self-starter. I have struggled with kind of insecurity, believe it or not, for my entire life. Goodness knows what happened back in my childhood to kind of foster that. But I have kind of been attracted to powerful, mercurial people. And thought that they've got the answer to everything. Quite often, they're utter bastards and they're
Yeah.
struggling with their own problems. And, I've found that the hard way. And there have been some terrible bust ups and some terrible endings to relationships that should have been very, very fertile and profitable. So you got to do it yourself and you've just got to double down. And if you don't know how to do something, all the tools are out there in the world now to learn how to do them.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though you say that. It's like a lot of really successful artists still suffer with that self-doubt. I find that
Mm.
interesting. Few of the people
Yeah,
I've
I think with
interviewed
I
on
think with
here.
artistry, you are in a very, you're creating something out of your mind and so yeah, I can really understand that. In business, I think self-reliance and the ability to at least do stuff, you can't go and be like a full chartered accountant doing your own tax return or what have you, but you can certainly keep your own books and keep an eye on your own money. You can read contracts, and with ChatGPT, you can basically get a professional level understanding of what you're signing or what you're negotiating. Legally, you need a lawyer, but ultimately, right now, you just need to just bring yourself up to a pseudo professional level of everything to be able to kind of be self-reliant, because sometimes you can trust other people and they just, yeah, they're not on the same page.
Yeah, great answer. Best advice for a DJ starting from zero today.
Yeah, it's got to be music production. And it's just got to be resilience. And there, the paradox at the moment is that AI and technology have democratized access to music production and performance. Anyone can make a tune, anyone can DJ. That makes it fun and accessible, but it makes it very, very, very competitive, more competitive than it's ever been. And subsequently, you are going to get very frustrated, and you're going to, if you're aspirational to get a gig or release a record, a lot of people just do it for the fun. And, a piece of advice might be just stay hobbyist,
Yeah,
because as soon as you try to kind of step into an arena that's competitive, you're going to get a lot of frustrations. You're going to get a lot of knockbacks. So whatever you can do, running is a great thing. Just get more resilience and learn to take those knocks, because they're going to come.
yeah, that's it, mate. And the final question and the most important one: what's the BPM? What's the best BPM in your opinion to rock a dance floor?
Good question. For me, it's I think 130, and that's really interesting. I've spent my entire music career operating at the extreme ends of BPMs, and so hard house 140 to 150, drum and bass 180 to 190, even kind of hell gabba and hardcore beyond that at points. But right now, at my age, when I DJ, I can mix a whole swathe of different styles of music at around 130 to 135, that's got a pace, that's got a toughness and got an energy, but a broad kind of like a toolkit of tunes to choose from, which means that I can keep the girls on the floor, I can keep the boys on the floor, and we can just make a really fun party where people, aren't afraid to step on the dance floor.
Oh, great answer. I'm shocked at the BPM
As
choice
I
though.
said, mate, it's
Yeah.
I've done a lot of time on these turntables. I've put a
Awesome.
lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
Sadly, perhaps I put a lot of thought into making money and self-enrichment, but it's not. My passion and my calling has been this dance floor and everything that goes around it.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Well, like I
Oh,
say,
thank you so
I'm hoping to
much.
come to England this year. I'm definitely
Bring
going to
it.
send you a message, try and meet up.
Absolutely, man. We'd love that. Thank you so much, dude. And yeah, great conversation. I mean, I'm buzzing.